talking to Rob Liebow. He is the Superintendent of Schools in Rockport. Hi, Rob. How are you today?
Not bad.
Good.
Going all right.
You have some big news that came down from on high today. Would you like to relate that to us?
Yeah, I think we didn't, not expect it to come with all the situation and looking at everybody's hardship and the nature of the virus around us. That the governor, I think, made the right decision, along with the Commission of Education, to suspend school as we know it for the remainder of the school year and to continue with the remote learning platforms that are in place. And one of the good things that he announced was sort of the loosening up of some of the restriction guidance that had been in play, which was to only review old material. So what they're talking about now is to shifting to allow schools and actually to encourage schools to move ahead beyond just the deepening of curriculum to include the introduction of new power standards or essential standards. So that way, all kids will have something new and it will be meaningful stuff that will apply to their transition to the next school year. Because it would have been really, really difficult to carry out the same process we were, going through for the remainder of the year and to be able to keep kids engaged. So by virtue of doing that, I think he also managed to be able to address some of the equity issues because all kids can approach the power standards in their own way. You won't have, the minutia of all these little tiny curriculum items that somebody might miss or need a lot of extra work getting up to speed on. If you keep with big major standards, you could approach those through projects and maybe through community outreach and that kind of stuff, and not necessarily have to drill down to the tiniest learning area. So that was a really encouraging thing, and I think it'll help keep our kids engaged for the remainder of the school year.
Can you just elaborate a little bit more about what a power standard is? What does this look like?
Well, a power standard are sort of the essential kinds of learning, and I guess when I describe it, if you were doing a study of literature, you might have a common theme: man's inhumanity to man. And then you could approach that through different books and different styles and different writings, but it's a pretty big sort of overlapping things that kids should know, and therefore it can be approached to their own learning style and at their own level and at their own speed, rather than what was in chapter 7 at the end that the character said. And then if a kid happens to be working at Shaw's grocery store because they don't have any choice right now, they don't miss that little tiny piece.
Mm.
But they can come back and they can relate to man's inhumanity to man. And we're seeing a little bit of that in places just in terms of how the virus is being treated around the country and that sort of stuff. So you can use the present day or the past day as a learning laboratory for that, and not leave a kid behind, but teach them something that's really, really important to know. So I think of it as things like that. You can do the same thing in math and the major points in history, the major points in health and wellness. They can all be approached through 8 or 10 overarching things for the remainder of the school year that then you can branch off in your own unique way of teaching, or for the kids' unique way of learning, or their ability to engage with the learning platform. They wouldn't necessarily have to be present for the lecture, on Zoom. They could take the material and come back and discuss the concept. And I think that's a really, really encouraging kind of thing. Some schools do that with their senior projects. They'll have kids be able to research. They did this back in Maine, in which they had a senior exhibition. And one kid might do, how to do a, heart surgery on a laboratory mouse because their father was a heart surgeon or whatever. And then another kid might be able to take those same kind of essential learnings and be able to do that on the autopsy on a diesel engine that doesn't work, and the putting that back together. So one kid puts a heart together back in a mouse, and another person puts a diesel engine back together. And they learn the same sort of concept of how things work together and how important they are to, running a boat for the engine or running a body for the heart surgeon. So I think that's a really exciting kind of thing. And I think our teachers will be excited about that because it gives them the intellectual freedom to not be constrained by the standards, but to be able to branch off in their own kind of way, because this has to be, difficult for our teachers, and it needs to be inspiring for them to be able to carry on the work. It's one thing to do a couple of weeks of it, and then to think about, okay, May 4th's gone by, May 18th, Memorial Day, early June. That's a long time to just try to, carry on business as usual. So I'm impressed and, thrilled that the commissioner has had the foresight to think about it that way and to understand the reality of what's the best thing for kids to be able to get something out of this school year that allows them to bridge to the next school year. And they're going to release those standards to us on Friday.
Okay.
So we're not going to have to invent those, which was one of our fear, that we'd have to, come up with those. He said today that he would be releasing those standards, those power standards. So that's about as good a, outcome as we possibly could have from the announcement for our kids and our teachers and our parents and the whole network, I think.
So that's pretty exciting. And so these new statewide power standards, and will you be having meetings with your faculty in the next, week to figure out, or even over the weekend, to figure out how to begin approaching these standards?
Yeah, once they're released, we obviously have to scurry around as quick as we can because we took the vacation week.
Right.
Our teachers right now would have some, downtime, which they should have for their own families, but they'd also be, like every educator, you're always thinking about the next time you get back in front of the kids. Sunday night is always Sunday night. It's when you're a kid, it sort of, disappears if you don't continue as a teacher. But I still have nightmares on Sunday night about school the next day. It's, it's sort of never gone away. And I think our teachers will spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, what's a power standard? They're, Googling that, they're researching that, they're thinking about how it relates to how they teach. And they're able to do that in a sort of a decompressed area right now for them mentally, and be able to get ready for that charge to the end of the school year on something that means something. And I hope they're issuing good standards. I mean, I think they're already kind of there. They're overarching in the Massachusetts learning results, but they're going to have to define those to us because they want all kids to get the same thing. And I think that's been really important to the commissioner, is that you don't leave kids behind, that you don't have some schools charging ahead or some teachers charging ahead, that all kids get the same kind of experience going into the new school year. So his focus on that and his vision on that is, I think, really important to make the best situation for our kids right now as can possibly be.
Well, all right. We got a bunch of questions that have come in,
Yep.
Rob. So is it safe to assume that prom, graduation, field trips have all been 86'd as of this point?
We haven't had that discussion because it was, noontime when the governor came out, even though the commissioner gave us a half an hour early heads up. We're going to have to cross those bridges. I think graduation is something we want to try to maintain in some way, in some form, because, I put the background up last time with Shackleton. Now this is the 75 members of the Rockport graduating class this year. And, they deserve to have a celebration. They've worked hard. I'm going to just slide aside so you can see them all for a second.
Yeah, very cool.
Oh, that's so great. That is really great.
And they've worked hard. They've worked hard in our school system. It's a small school. There's only 75 of them. That picture is taken on their annual cruise that they have, that's donated by Cape Ann Whale Watch, whose kids went to school at Rockport, and the boat comes in from the whaling day, and the kids all get on that boat, and pizzas that are donated, and the parents and the kids celebrate the beginning of their senior year. And then they all get on the bow and take that class picture. So here it is, what should have been, going out that way, hugging each other in their caps and gowns, is now in a question. And we will do everything in our power to figure out how we can have a celebration for them. Whether we can pull off prom, that's a little harder. But seniors, graduation, we are going to put our heads together and figure out a way that we can somehow get beyond that. I sort of remember the vision of Big Papi on the field at the Boston Red Sox game after the marathon bombing. How many years ago was it now?
Are
But
you going to quote him that day? Is that possible?
I would love to quote him, but this is our city. This is our town. This is Rockport, and it's special. And he said it pretty clearly. I probably won't say it as clearly as he said it, but it brought people together, and I think that helped us heal. And I think the best thing for us is if we can figure out a way for graduation to happen, will help us heal as a school system, and will give the seniors something they deserve. Um, the virus is starting to have reached its peak and tailing off, so maybe we'll be in a way that we can mask and glove and create distance and be able to pull something off. And we're not going to pull the plug on graduation until the last possible minute to be able to do that. Some of the other things involve rental spaces, and how do you have a prom if you can't dance? It's a little harder. The last song at the end of the night, it's a little hard to do if you're in a social distancing mode. They play Stairway to Heaven. I think at my prom, it was the 21-minute version of Stairway to Heaven was a big thing at the prom. And, our kids deserve that. But graduation, that's their grandparents. And, some of those kids might have had parents that never graduated from high school. And in our town, it's a super celebration because they all know each other really, really, really well. My graduation was in La Jolla High School in California with a class of 490 kids, and it was on the football field, and they pronounced my name wrong, Bob Liebow. It's like, okay, well, so what? You walk up, they give you your diploma. It meant nothing, basically. You did it because you had to do it. Here, graduation, there's no speaker. They don't bring in, Senator Tarr, even though that would be awesome. The kids put graduation on themselves. They sing. Zach Massari last year sang a song about every stage of his career in high school. And that was a kid who had a hard time even speaking when he was in junior high. Stood in front of that entire auditorium, that entire gymnasium, and played a song that was just so meaningful. Tears were streaming down your face. And our kids deserve that. And my pledge is we'll find a way to do something, if at all humanly possible, for our seniors.
Well, and now that we know that standards are going to be released Friday, maybe instead of these questions, I can just share some of the concerns that parents have about remote learning. One is whether those hours will be expanded or contracted during the day.
I'm not sure of that answer, and I don't want to sort of, go out one way or the other. I know that screen time, if you expanded to go longer screen time, isn't necessarily the way to go. To go a shorter screen time, I'm not sure is the way to go either, but I don't have a clear answer. We haven't seen the standards. Time goes by, weather gets better. I think we're going to depend a lot on what our kids say about it, and how they feel about it, because they're the ones that are having to be involved in it day to day. And I think that's probably all over the board. Some would want a longer time, some would want a shorter time. I think right now it's probably about the right length that we're using, and we'll modify as we need to, and we'll do it on the fly. We'll look at it every week, and it may change from week to week. So that's dancing around the pin a little bit, but I don't think we're automatically going to say you're going to go to a 6-hour screen time day. I think that would be disaster for a lot of kids, to have to sit in front of a screen for that long. You cannot have remote learning replace a classroom. It can't replace the school day. And the commissioner has stayed with that. And I don't think he would say increase the amount of screen time. I think he would say do the standards, look at other ways to approach it, but not just to duplicate the school day. You can't do that on remote learning. It's impossible to do that.
And then some parents have asked if it would be possible for them to get the curriculum for the rest of the school year so that they could do more homeschooling, since a lot of parents are actually working from home now and utilizing that screen time.
They always can get the Massachusetts Learning Standards, and they can get those off the website, but they will have access to those power standards. We just haven't seen those yet. So it's not something we can send out to them quite yet, but we will be able to do at least the power standards. And they can already go to, what a student at 9th grade should be learning in math. They can go right to I'm not sure it's on our website right now, but it's on the DESE website where you can go to those Massachusetts learning standards and be able to do that and be able to move ahead if they so choose. But the power standards, yes, we're going to have those in hand and we can send those out because they won't be so voluminous as the overarching standards when it gets down to the minutia are.
Mhm. Great. Anything else, Heather? Or?
No, I think that you've covered everything. I still am thinking about those kindergartners, I think, doing their breathing lessons on Zoom with Miss Kniff.
I actually misstated when I watched that. I said Miss Kniff. That was actually Darlene Trumbore.
Oh, even better, Miss Trumbore.
In which Miss Kniff had been in there and she'd done the sort of jumping jack piece and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the teacher had done the sort of morning meeting. And then on camera comes Darlene Trumbore and she's doing the deep breathing. She's a former classroom teacher in the early grades who then went into, when we had the right timing, we were able to add a health teacher.
Mhm.
And when would physical and mental health be any more important than it is right now? And she came right on and she's the one that just said, okay, kids, we're going to do deep breathing right now. And their eyes were just like this. And it was like, there wasn't a poke in the room. There wasn't a misguided eye.
Oh.
And I think she has that power on a good day in school. But to be able to do it on Zoom at the end of the meeting, hand it off from the classroom teacher, the respect that those kids had for her and her power and her passion for teaching is what keeps us going. And it's, you know, it's a hard situation. You look at it and I don't know. I was thinking about movies. I always think about movies. There was a movie I watched when I was a kid called The Day the Earth Stood Still, in which this spaceship comes down from outer space and lands, and out comes this creature. But the creature has been sent there to basically fix the human beings. In the beginning, they're scared and they're petrified of what this thing is doing. And they start talking about the virus. And out of it comes this message of hope in humanity for the earth. So, I mean, I'm hoping that that's what we get out of this. That, you know, we talked the other day about cards being dealt, and that's one analogy, but we're in a different mode right now in which who knows what comes after June. You know, we have to keep a lot of things going to make sure this doesn't come back. You know, the commissioner was talking about when we return to school in the summer or the fall, that maybe we'll have to do shifts in school. Maybe only half the kids come one day and half the kids come another day. And you start to go, my goodness, how would that work? So that you can maintain separation in classrooms. And, you know, they were planning for what if this comes back? What if people don't adhere to the real importance of getting rid of this virus? It was as if that sort of spaceship had landed and then down the steps walked this person who said, this is what you need to do. And, you know, I was just a little guy when I watched that movie, and it was meaningful then, the day the earth stood still. So I don't know.
We'll look that up.
It's worthwhile. It's an old black and white one, and it's worth watching. Don't watch that. I think there was a rerun of it. So watch the original. Get it on, you know, like Netflix, the black and white one. I was born in 1954, so it probably had to be a 60, 58 or 60 movie that I was watching. And it's meaningful now that how many years later do you still remember that message about, you know, the earth has to change, the earth has to be better. And maybe we're going to get some powerful lessons out of this. You got to look at a bright side. And our kids, again, they are what keep us alive. They're what makes, as far as I'm concerned, Rockport have a heart and soul. You know, we were up against an override, and we had to take the override off the table.
We haven't talked about that,
Yep.
right?
And that had to go away because of the troubling times everybody is in right now make it difficult to go and ask for that. So there'll be some real sacrifices, but we need our partners to help us with our kids down the line. And it was just the right thing to do, to take that off the table for this year and then to come back, hopefully in better times, to take care of our most precious resource. Those kids behind me right now are the future. They're the doctors and lawyers and boat captains. I talked about, real quick off the air with you, Heather, about who donated that boat. It's Jim Douglas, who runs Cape Ann Whale Watch. Imagine what he's thinking about right now. Is there a whale watching season coming up? He'd be running his first trip in a week.
Yeah.
He's got crew and fuel and dock payments and all that kind of stuff. Well, his son Connor was in one of the first classes when I was first here. Top-notch soccer player, great kid. He now has his, multi-ton captain's license and is running a catamaran ferry across Boston Harbor right now. And he got that sort of drive and attention to detail, I think, from his sports activities. He got that from Dave Curley in soccer. He got that in his hockey discipline. He got it from his father, and he got it from going to a small school in Rockport where people care for each other. And he's put that to work in his vocation. And he's been out 8-9 years now. So we're going to need the help of our partners in Rockport. But right now was not the time to go and ask for that. So that was pulled off the table by the school committee the other night, and I think was the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm going to make one comment about Rockport. My kids went to Rockport Elementary School, and someone once commented, an adult told me, I walked into the halls of Rockport Elementary School, and the kids looked me in the eye. And I'd never experienced that, and she said, that's the greatness of a small school, that kids know adults and they trust adults and they, give them a smile and look them in the eye.
What I saw when I went for my interview was I didn't want to sit with Sue King in the office and talk about budget books. I wanted to go out and stand in the hallway and watch how kids treated each other. And they treated each other really, really well. Mm-hmm. And I went by the lockers and there wasn't a lock on any of the lockers. I'm going, wow, somebody's going to steal somebody's tape deck. Oh, we don't do that here. You can open the locker up. You can borrow gum from the locker, close the locker, replace it with something. I mean, we're not perfect, but how many schools don't have a lock on any locker in the whole school? Yeah. And I was wearing this hat here. I've sort of put these things on here. This was Levin Rudler's dream for this summer. He's a junior in high school. He was going to be in the Atlantic Challenge, which is a international rowing competition that a few years ago was held in Ireland. And he had his chance to go back this year to St. Petersburg, Russia. That was his dream. And he had enough to put some money on the table. And we were out fundraising to be able to get him the extra money he needed to be able to go over there and be in that team challenge with international racing crews. And now that's gone for him. And this was the hat we did for the fundraiser. If you gave $100, you got this hat donated to you. Mm-hmm. And on the back of it is Levin's name and the Atlantic Challenge that would have happened this summer. So I wear it in honor of Levin. He'll get his chance to get back on the water again. And I have a special sort of connection with him because of the importance of water. And, the ocean to me is so much a part of my soul that to see that sort of ripped from Levin right now in his junior year is so sad. But every kid's got all kinds of different things ripped from them. Right. We as adults have things ripped from us. And now we just have to compensate and make the best of the situation that we're in. And I mean, the baseball team, the seniors can't play in their last game. After we made the announcement, I think it was Lauren Ryan's mother puts on the Facebook how sad she is. She knew it was coming, that Lauren isn't going to get her senior softball season. And she was so instrumental in the basketball season. She hit a 3-pointer in one of those games that, put those kids into the playoffs. And now she's not going to have the chance to, hit a home run in her senior year. Mm-hmm. That's just horrible. That's the collateral damage on a kid level that is just so hard to wrap our heads around, that we're going to try to make a graduation for Lauren and, a next year for Levin so he can go back maybe to Russia. What an experience that would have been to, go over to St. Petersburg and be involved in that. So every kid behind me has a story.
Mm.
They have a future. They've gotten accepted to colleges, and they're going to move on, and they are a precious, precious resource. And every school could say the same thing. If I was the Gloucester superintendent, I'd say the same stuff about I don't know how many they have in a graduating class, but the same thing, be the same feeling. Those kids are our most precious resource and our key asset. I believe they're more important than the wall at Long Beach. I think they are our future. They're the wall that keep us out of trouble. They're going to take care of me someday. I'm 66 years old. So in, 10 years, one of them's going to be a nurse. One of the first kids I ever connected with was Mike Tupper. And Mike Tupper Sr. is a fisherman, just a tremendous fisherman. Mike Tupper Jr. didn't really like school all that much. He'd wear his hat down the hall, and you're not supposed to wear the hat in school. Well, he and I did this navigation class. He now owns his own boat. He's out there, and the challenge for him was so important. Maybe I was just one little piece of him staying in school. That was his science credit. We did this navigation course, because otherwise he might have just dropped out. And every kid has a story, and every kid has a future. And that's why we're in education. The teachers that are, offline somewhere are in a difficult time. They're in a really, really hard time, and so important to pulling this all off. So anyway, I get emotional because this is my 47th year, and I'm going to retire in 2 years, and kids have fueled my soul forever. And, Rockport was a dream place to land and to spend the last few years of my time in education. And I remember every one of them, and it's so sad that they can't have what they should have this spring. So we're going to, again, devote ourselves to make that happen somehow.
Beautifully put, Rob.
Yeah. Let's catch up again. All right. Thank you so much.